Hello and welcome to Cemetery Stories Capital Connections Edition, Season 2. I'm your host, Capital Eric, and I'm a tour guide here at Sacramento Historic City Cemetery, as well as the California State Capitol Museum, a unit of California State Parks, just up the road. And I'd like to tell you today about one of our permanent residents here at the City Cemetery, someone who was connected in life or in death with the state capitol. Let's go. Don't be scared. If you have visited the California State Capitol, you may have seen this portrait of George Washington. And this portrait might have struck you as familiar, as well it should. You may have seen similar renditions in the White House, the National Portrait Gallery, the Brooklyn Museum, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, or one of nearly 24 other places. It seems that everyone in the late 18th and early 19th centuries wanted this portrait of the father of his country, or something like it, in their home. But in the case of this copy in the California State Capitol, not only is the composition similar to the version hanging in the East Room of the White House, the two renditions share a similar history as well. Our version is attributed to Jane Stewart, the daughter of artist Gilbert Stuart, seen here in a portrait painted by Jane, and is based on one of her father's famous portraits of Washington. The Capitol's copy was hanging in the old county courthouse that was temporarily serving as the state capitol in 1854. That building, along with most of the rest of downtown Sacramento, burned to the ground in the Great Fire of July 1854. It may have looked something like this when Sacramento burned just 2 years earlier. Fires, floods, and disease epidemics struck the city on a regular basis in the early days. It's one of the reasons why Sacramento is known as the Indomitable City. Seeing that this portrait of Washington was in immediate danger, Governor John Bigler called out to the men fleeing around him, "See, there is a portrait of the father of your country. Will you permit it to be destroyed?" This led to a general rush to save the painting, and today it hangs here in the Senate chamber. This event mirrors something that happened in the nation's history. As I said, the state capitol's portrait is attributed to Jane Stewart and is based on one of her father's portraits of Washington. One of Father Gilbert's copies, he made several of his own work, everyone wanted one, was hanging in the White House during the War of 1812. On the night of August 23, 1814, the British Army burned the White House. Before escaping to safety, First Lady Dolly Madison, the wife of President James Madison, at the cost of losing her own personal possessions to the fire, saved the portrait by ordering the frame, which had been screwed to the wall, broken and the portrait rolled up for easy transport. It was reframed and now hangs in the East Room of the White House. History repeats itself. The earlier portrait done by the father was saved from fire in a government building, and the later portrait done by the daughter was also saved from fire in a government building. While the reasons for the two fires were different, the heroic actions in response to the danger by Dolly Madison and John Bigler were quite similar. Third Governor of California John Bigler rests here in the old Masonic section of Sacramento Historic City Cemetery, one of 3 state governors interred here. Well, that's been another episode of Cemetery Stories Capital Connections Edition, Season 2. I'm your host, Capital Eric, and it's been my pleasure telling you a little bit about the cemetery as well as the state capitol. Now, unfortunately, during the pandemic, the California State Capitol Museum, a unit of California State Parks, is closed to the public. However, the cemetery remains open for a solitary stroll or some quiet contemplation. Keep up the social distancing, wash your hands, because it is better to be 6 feet apart than 6 feet under. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.